Well, hello friends, and welcome to my channel. And today's this recording's topic is going to be on the war between Israel and Hamas. I'm avoiding to say the war is between Israel and Palestine or Palestinian people, is because I basically, in my mind, I definitely differentiate between Hamas and Palestinian people. In my opinion, Hamas is uh, totally captured by, I'm sorry, Palestinian people are totally captured by Hamas organization, which is internationally deemed to be as a terrorist organization. So, what I the way to approach this topic, it is absolutely from many perspectives, from the humanitarian perspective, from the historical perspective, from the geopolitical perspective in the region, in the Middle East, in the larger, greater Middle East area, and even dependent on the developments global. It has all these relevant potential possible consequences for each of these perspectives, and it is nearly impossible actually to get into delve into this subject matter and try to make sense out of it, try to kind of attempt to explain it without necessarily delving into history. And when I say history, I mean that is a pretty long history. There is no way, I guess, in one recording, just to kind of delve into it and explain. And two, and I don't even claim any kind of so-called expert knowledge of whether the Jewish history or Palestinian history, history of Arabs, history of Middle East. I'm not necessarily here, coming with this kind of a claim. But as far as I'm concerned, and I'm being originally from Turkey, I've been living in this country in the United States, state of Minnesota, for 35 years altogether. Not only state of Minnesota, but altogether in this country, 35 years, and I'm a naturalized American citizen. And I'm also pretty interested in what's going on in the world, trying to kind of make sense out of events, wars, civil strifes, civil wars, all kinds of dangerous dynamics, what's going on in the world, politically, economically, socially. So all those things, basically, I just basically felt the need to bring my own 2 cents into this topic. So first off, allow me and excuse me if I kind of exceed or cross some lines, and someone would say what you're saying is wrong, what you're saying doesn't make sense. Keep your own opinion to yourself and all those things, and I can hear them, and I would not necessarily take it that personally. Like I said, this is a topic extremely deep, complex, and large. So, where do I want to start? First off, I want to start with what happened on October 7th with the attack by Hamas terrorists. And again, I'm choosing my words carefully here. I'm not gonna call them Hamas militants. I call them Hamas terrorists. They attacked unprepared, unarmed Israeli citizens when they were having a party. And once they were done with their attack, altogether about 1,500 Israelis died. About 200 of them were Israeli soldiers, the rest were civilians. And I did watch the videos that were somehow captured or obtained through GoPro cameras on Hamas terrorists' uh, body armor, hats, whatever they were wearing, and also their smartphones. Totally raw, not edited, 100% amateurish tapes, directly showing the world how that horrible terrorist attack took place. And especially after learning what they did to so many babies they beheaded, tortures, burning people alive, busting houses, and killing people who are unarmed and unprepared and not being able to defend themselves. It was nothing but a massacre. One more thing I want to add here. As you all know, we all heard about the Iron Dome that Israel has. Israel, for their defensive purposes, kind of Iron Dome. It's named against Hamas rockets and missiles. The number of rockets that Hamas sent was about 6,400, which overwhelmed totally Iron Dome. Still worked, but it still was unable to stop every single missile or rocket attack because of the sheer number of the rockets that they sent, and those that the dome wasn't able to stop still managed to kill that many people. Imagine if there wasn't that Iron Dome, how many people would have been killed. Now, first off, before I continue, I want to ask people here this question. If, let's say, instead of 1,500 people were killed in Israel by Hamas terrorists, in combination with, rocket attacks and also those on foot, one by one, killing people, what would you say? How many people would have been killed? We're talking about a total of 6,400 rockets. If every one of them fell on Israel, my take is maybe hundreds of thousands of Israelis would have been killed. Now, the following this, I asked this myself. Honestly, I try to be very honest with myself and ask, if this happened to my nation, to my family, to my city, to my town, to my neighborhood, and if I saw little babies were beheaded, burned alive, what kind of reaction I would have shown? None of us are angels. Or what would you do? What would you say? The same question I'm asking myself. If you ask yourself, what would you say? What kind of response would be so-called proportional? I think, almost anyone I can hear, and I imagine, and I honestly believe, would be saying, for each of those innocent people, for each of those babies, we're going to go ahead and kill so many multitudes of terrorists. So this is my take, first off, on this issue. Now I want to be careful, and I want to add here because it is equally important. When Hamas took this action, knowing that it was going to produce this kind of response, which was going to be extremely asymmetric, given the power differential between Hamas and Israel, Israeli military, IDF, Israeli Defense Group, IDG, Defense Forces, IDF. Given the difference, the power differential, given the differences, the technology gap between those two, who would ever think that they were not going to respond? And when they do respond, because of the logistics of the operation, that the Hamas terrorists are hiding themselves within the Palestinian community by force, because they created a fear. So they're basically hiding in their houses, under their mosques, within the hospitals, all those places. But no matter how you look at it, on the other hand, I feel equal concern for the Palestinian people who are being subjected to the current terror. I mean, when I'm saying current terror, I'm saying the current conditions that are being imposed on them, which is the Israeli military operations, and so far it's been more than 2 weeks, and the land operation has not officially started, although it's kind of partially some places, but not the full scale land operation started. So the Palestinian people, not Hamas terrorists, I repeat, because I do separate the Hamas terrorists from Palestinian people. They knowingly and willingly put them on the harm's way. They knew it was going to happen. They did not care. And now close to, I think, over 6,000 Palestinian civilians, innocent civilians, have been killed under Israeli firepower. It is extremely unfortunate, yet Hamas terrorists did not give Israeli military any option other than responding and responding at this scale. So this is the way I see this. It is incredibly difficult to say, okay, one side is absolutely right, the other side is absolutely wrong. It's much more complicated than that. My take is, I believe two-state solution in the region where Israelis do live in peaceful manner with the Palestinian Arabs. On the other hand, also I'm asking you to put yourself in a position, honestly, unless you have some very strong reason to kind of take one of the sides 100% and absolutely rejecting any kind of arguments or discussions coming from the other side. I'm trying to be as objective as possible. I'm trying to be as fair as possible, first off to myself when I think about this matter, and then I'm trying to explain it as I think. Israeli people, the population of Israel is about 7 million people, and they are living within the Arab Ocean. There are a total of 57 Islamic nations in the world and 22 Arab nations in the region. Every single one of them are basically resolved to wipe the state of Israel, off the map. So put yourself in this kind of situation that you're surrounded. You're actually living on a little island in the ocean, and that ocean is all over, all around you, 100% is your enemy, and more than resolved to basically drown you in the water, wipe you off the earth. So Israel had to, since 1947, came up with a lot of measures and progress to maintain their existence in that region. I personally think Israel has every right to exist in that area, where it's called Israel, which was created in 1948, short after the end of the Second World War. I know a lot of people, depending on where they're coming from, they're fundamentalist radical Muslims, based on their radical interpretations of the religion and Islamic religion. They're going to say Jews should be eliminated, they're horrible, they're this, they're that. Or they can explain all these things leading to the final biggest war, the Third World War. Or again, equally, the radical Christians who can come up with very similar interpretations of what's going on in the region, given the Christian interpretation of Jewish existence, the role of the Middle East, historically and in current age, and the Jews' role in this history, especially from the religious perspective, as their radical biblical translations and interpretations. And aside from those people, I know there is enough number of people who are heavy into extreme conspiracy theories and can come up with all kinds of possibilities and justifications and reasons now to explain what's happening now in the Middle East between Arabs and Israelis, Arabs and Jews, from the kind of end of days perspective. They'll be bringing Armageddon, they will bring in all kinds of religious texts and holy scriptures, explanations, and all those. The nature of Arab-Israeli clashes or wars or problems or frictions, what have you, throughout, at least since the establishment of the State of Israel, have been subject to these kinds of explanations and conversations and interpretations. So now that I try to create some kind of a context that would function as a kind of base, so I can build my conversation, my argument on that platform. I'm not necessarily seeing things from the religious perspectives. Let me make sure that this is the case. I am from Turkey. I am 100% secular person. I became a naturalized American citizen, and I've been living in this country 35 years. And my overall ideologies can be described: one, believing in secular law and secular lifestyle, and the rule of law, which is not determined by so-called holy books, but by the human reason, the human mind. Therefore, complete separation of church and the state. That's my utmost ideological stand. Me as a person who is utterly secular, and my own beliefs are not that important. I do consider myself a deist. Therefore, I do not follow and or practice any organized religion. And I do not try to explain things from the religious texts' perspectives. I only try to make sense, analyze, and try to understand the developments from only rational reason, perspective of the reason, that we can build our discussions and arguments based on logical arguments, reason, that is created and maintained and developed by the secular mind. A rational mind, that is what I'm referring to. Therefore, I will not, you're not going to hear from me any kind of religious arguments. So after basically establishing this fact, then I want to continue. In this case, because I said that, I'm not going to go back to the history of the religion, like when the Judaism came into being, which was about almost 4,000 years ago, and obviously Christianity about 2,000 years ago, and the existence of Islam 1,400 years ago it started. And what those books, how they came into play, and the people, the followers of those books, and their clashes, and their faith-based clashes, and faith-based, religion-based hatred, and all that, it's there. Obviously, it's a fact. It's a sociological fact. But I will not base my discussion based on those religious texts and claims. So let's look at what's going on more from the secular political perspectives, geopolitical and historical secular perspectives. After, as we all know, after the big Holocaust in Europe during the Second World War, at the end of the war, which was 1945, the talks started to establish the State of Israel in 1946, and it was realized physically realized in 1947, and Jewish settlers started coming to this country, Israel, state of Israel, mostly from Europe. And as they come, the settlers, with the help of the Western nations, Western powers, they were kind of given a go, the green light, and they had help and assistance of the Western powers. And in the region, which today it's called State of Israel, depending on who you're talking to, the Palestinian Arabs would call it Palestine. They increased their existence gradually. So 1947, and then there's famous 1967 war, Arab-Israeli war, and then 1995 Oslo Accord, in which basically they find the conditions that those people can coexist, Israelis and Palestinians, in the region. And the solution was a two-state solution. But then what we're witnessing is starting with October 7th, the relationships, the situation got into extremely ugly phase. Those who are coming from more religious-based side, the Islamic side, will be taken almost unequivocally the side of Palestinian people, and they will say Jews have been applying very harsh measures, and they were literally keeping them in almost like a prison, open prison within their land, and they were depriving them all kinds of freedoms. This is not 100% wrong, but if you look at that, the people in Gaza Strip and West Bank, Israelis and Arabs, Jews and Arabs are also coexistent within the state of Israel as Israeli citizens as well. And actually, people from Gaza were able to go to Israel and have jobs and work. And on the average, they were making 5 or 10 folds more of how much they would be making in Gaza Strip or West Bank. Yes, there was a lot of skirmishes or tensions and hatred and all that, but nevertheless, they were trying to coexist in the region. So I'm having trouble here to understand why Hamas terrorists are coming up with this attack. Now let's look at Hamas. Hamas is actually officially a government governing people in Gaza Strip. Before that, it was a Palestinian Authority under Abbas, but they lost their power, they lost their authority to Hamas. So, given that, Hamas, with their terroristic structure, they gain power to actually govern the entire Gaza Strip area, where 2.3 million Palestinians reside. They were providing whatever typical functionalities a government or quasi-government should provide, which is services, security, water, food, education, health, those kinds of things. Whether they were sufficient or not is not a matter of our discussion, but that's what they were doing. That was the role they found themselves or they brought themselves into. So one is, I cannot help myself but ask, what was it that Hamas was expecting before they planned, obviously, according to experts, they planned for years. Actually, what I understand is it's at least 2 years of planning and a lot of support, financial, technological, training-wise, all those things. It is to me, it doesn't make sense. I just, can't help but think that, Israel, what their intelligence organization Mossad, which is known to be as maybe the best intelligence organization in the world, and with their technologically sophisticated military, although it is small scale, still powerful enough and technologically advanced enough to maintain their existence in the region, which is rather challenging. If you think there are nations like Iran sworn to wipe them off the earth, I think one can understand that. So, how is it that, first off, my first question, Hamas was able to create those tunnels, which has approximately 5,000 exit and entry points in Gaza Strip, that was not seen or tracked by Israeli intelligence, Mossad? Two, how is it possible that 2 years of this kind of a preparation is taking place, and then 14, how many terrorists they were using there, like I think over 1,000 terrorists, they were able to overwhelm their early warning systems, Israelis' early warning systems, and they were able to pass and cross and conduct those kinds of attacks. Those questions are, I believe, at some point in the future, begging for answers, because I don't think they're answered. They have been answered yet, and everybody, anyone who's working on this should be asking those questions until they're answered, because I'm thinking there is something else going on here. Now I know I'm sounding like kind of a conspiracy theory guy, but I cannot help but say this. I don't believe what I see on the face value. I repeat, I don't believe what I'm seeing on the face value. There must be something else going on way behind the scenes. So, okay, Hamas did what they did. They went in October 7th. They conducted their murders, rape, burning, the worst possible crimes against humanity, and then took a lot of prisoners with them, about 200 of them, and now they're hiding somewhere in those tunnels, knowing that Israel has been killing innocent civilians. But anymore, it is such an ugly war that a lot of times I believe it is not almost possible to separate the terrorist from the civilian. One thing I have to say, I do condemn that the hospital was hit by Israeli missiles and rockets. Actually, it was a certain kind of a bomb which leveled the entire hospital and killed 500 people in it, with lots of children in it. In my opinion, however horrible wars are, and wars are definitely the most horrible events that can happen to humanity, even those wars have to have some kind of moral compass, and it looks like this compass has been lost. That is on Israel. I put this and I placed this squarely on Israel. They could, I believe, they're advanced enough. They're sufficiently advanced to be able to conduct operations to spot and determine the terrorists and their locations under those tunnels, and eventually find them, kill them, bring them to judge, some kind of a judgment, whatever, but find them without necessarily hitting the hospital and killing 500 people in it. That is something that I squarely place this as a crime against humanity, unfortunately, on Israel. So this is the ugliness that is created by war. People of Israel, who were subject to horrible Holocaust during the Second World War by Nazis in the middle of Europe, they established their free nation called State of Israel. And yes, they have every right to defend themselves. Every right. I'm not opposing to that. But that should not bring or should not include hitting a hospital. Because right now, on the other hand, As much as Israelis and State of Israel has their story, well, Palestinian people also have their story. And right now in Palestine, instead of I don't want to even call, cannot even call it State of Palestine because it's not a nation. Palestinian people in their area, especially now Gaza Strip, a horrible humanitarian crisis is taking place to the point that within the next 24 hours or so, is what I understand. Within the next 24 hours or so, if there is not sufficient medication, water, and food, the scale of the disaster will be a lot bigger. And it looks like Israeli army are not even thinking about stopping or slowing down. They will go until they finish Hamas, which I 100% support. Hamas, just like any other so-called Islamic terrorist organization, like Hezbollah, Al Qaeda, Taliban, Al Shabaab, Boko Haram, Al Nusra, and many others. The list goes on, up to 70 different organizations, terroristic organizations. Most of them are using some kind of Islamic jihadist reasons. Hamas is one of them, which was actually deriving from Muslim Brotherhood. The Hamas leadership was established early 70s, I think. I'm sorry, I might be wrong. I might be wrong on the dates. From the Muslim Brotherhood. And look what we're noticing now, what we're seeing, what we're witnessing in the Arab world, in the Islamic world. Right south of the southern part of Gaza Strip is Egypt, and they're not willing to open their borders to take them in because they're scared. They don't want trouble. They don't want trouble because they had a lot of trouble with Muslim Brotherhood, and they kind of see this as a kind of extension of it. Jordan, they don't want them. They don't want to open their borders. No other Arab nation wanted them. They don't want them. They're not kind of coming up with strong, actual, tangible, sufficient support, financially or otherwise. So those poor Palestinian people are left alone. But again, depending on whose side you're looking at, if you're Jewish or Israeli citizen, more like it, it's a different story. If you're looking from the Palestinian civilians' perspective, it is a different story. And again, I don't want to create an image that I'm putting every single Palestinian citizen or Palestinian person, individual, in the same boat, in the same bucket with the Hamas terrorists. Absolutely not. I know Palestinian people are they've been hijacked by the Hamas. They're living under fear. And even though the Israeli government is telling them, giving them early warning and saying, leave the area because we're going to have a land operation to capture those Hamas terrorists. And even though so many of them wanted to leave, Hamas terrorists are not letting them go. So how do you explain that? They're doing this because they want to use them as human shield. The lives of Palestinian people matter not to the Hamas terrorists. It is obviously very clear. So we should be careful to make these distinctions and understand. And I'm trying to choose again my words carefully, not to give any kind of wrong image, that I'm not necessarily blindly taking this side or that side. I'm trying to be as objective as possible. So this is my kind of 2 cents into this. And I cannot help but, think that this war, as it continues, at the scale it's going now, the possibilities of spreading the broader war or broader conflict in the region is extremely high now. I mean extremely high. A lot of people are already contemplating writing articles, talking, many channels, social media, many platforms about the possibilities of this conflict, not only expanding into the region, Middle East region, but way exceeding that and leading to Third World War. This is the Third World War kind of conversations are now we're hearing. We were not hearing that much after the Russians attacked Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine have been, it's going to be 2 years in this February, February 24th, in a matter of about 4 months. In a matter of 4 months, it's going to be 2 years. And we don't hear any kind of Third World War arguments or discussions or reasoning based on what's going on between Russians and Ukrainians. But we are hearing this, and we'll be hearing this more. As we hear more, and as we witness more and more Navy assets are sent there by the United States, by the United Kingdom, by Germany, by maybe other nations, even China. We'll be hearing this more. And all these, the conspiracy theory kind of guys, religious radical or / conspiracy guys, / secular politic discussions, I'm afraid at some point they'll be all kind of conjoining and then kind of getting into one place, and they might be justified even given the horror and seriousness of what's going on, and it looks like it's going up, the level of seriousness, and we might be talking those kinds of possibilities. In my opinion, that's just my humble personal opinion. I'm still not seeing a true potential or tangible conditions leading to Third World War type of situation. I'm certainly thinking it is possible that Iran might be involved. Iran's involvement will inevitably expand this war in the region. I repeat, excuse me, Iran's involvement in this war will inevitably, without any kind of hesitation, I'm saying that, will expand this war in the region and will bring way more catastrophic outcomes. And also, potential Turkish involvement in the war is there too. I'm watching what's going on in Turkey, what people are saying, what people are doing, what the politicians are doing. Well, at least one thing I can see: people are resolved to support Palestinian people, and people every day, every passing day, unfortunately, is getting more and more resolved against Israel, the state of Israel, to the point that Israel officially called Jews who are living in Turkey to get out of there for their safety. It is a very sad thing. I want to tell you why I'm saying a sad thing. Jewish people in Turkey have been living in Turkey for about 500 years. Since 1490s, since 15th century, about 5 centuries. There are Jewish people. Today's Turkish Republic. Before that, it was Ottoman Empire. And the history, very briefly, they were living, originally they were in Spain. Those Jewish people who are in Turkey now, their origins were in Spain. And then during the Inquisition age, about 500 years ago, when the Christianity were, applying those ugly Inquisition tortures, Jews were being massacred just like Nazis were massacring them during the Second World War. Then the Ottoman Sultan, in the 15th century, sent the Ottoman Navy to Spain to rescue all the Jews that are being subjected to this Holocaust in Spain 500 years ago, and brought them to Istanbul. That's why when I was growing up in Istanbul, I had a lot of Jewish neighbors. My parents had a lot of Jewish friends. We were at very good terms. and we had no whatsoever any kind of negative relationship. That's why I'm saying, I'm using this word, growing up like this in Turkey with Jewish people. Today, the fact that Israeli government is telling the Jews, get out of there for your safety, it is a very sad thing to see for me. That is what's going on in Turkey. And Turkish people are, every passing day, coming up, increasing the pressure on the political establishment, the party in power, to make a decision to send Turkish military to Gaza to support the Palestinian people. How do you support the Palestinian people? That means, do they have to get in fight, get in war, start a war against the state of Israel? State of Israel and Turkey has been more or less trying to get along, because given the potential current complexities of the region, they've been trying to improve things. And in the middle of this process, this whole thing started. And what would happen if Turkish military is sent there, the Turkish troops are sent there to fight what, against Israelis? What are the, I cannot even begin to think the potential consequences if that happens. That's after or during about the same time with Iran is getting involved with the war. And by the way, the Iranian nuclear capabilities are at a point that, as those of you who are interested in that might know, they've been working very hard to enrich their uranium capabilities, to be able to support nuclear capabilities, so they can produce, potent nuclear heads to be installed on their long-range missiles. They're not far from realizing that goal. So we can see the complexity and sensitivity of this situation without necessarily delving into whatever kind of analysis we think we can do, given our tools and knowledge and current information, which is limited, which is very limited. So the only thing I can wish is Israel stops when they believe they cleared Hamas. The entire leadership group, the entire leadership of Hamas, and all their terrorists, which they estimate 30,000 strong. What is now another frightening factor is the fact that Hezbollah is saying we're going to be joining forces with Hamas to support against the Jews, and that's like 100,000 strong Hezbollah fighters. And Hezbollah being the fact that being financially supported, technologically supported, trained, and organized and coordinated by Iran as their, what is the word? I'm trying to think of the word. I'm sorry, I couldn't. It just didn't come to me. They're fighting actually Iran's war in the region. That might sound kind of like again conspiracy theory, proxy war. I'm sorry, yeah, I just remembered it now. Hezbollah is fighting or offering to fight a proxy war in the name of their masters, which is Iran and Ayatollahs in Iran. As you know, a lot of proxy wars have been fought currently in the region. A lot of them. So, I hope they find and completely annihilate Hamas leadership and Hamas fighters. No matter how many they are. No matter how many they are, I repeat. And then they can sit down and restart the conversation again with the Palestinian people, Arabs, to be able to come to a point, some kind of a common ground to see if they can live as two different people, two different states in the region, as it was established in Oslo Accord in 1995, according to the Oslo Accord. I don't think there's any other solution other than this, because anything else other than that means either Israel will be the only people or only state at the expense of the other, and vice versa. And either situation, either so-called solution is not acceptable from the humanitarian perspective. That means either 2.3 million people will be either expelled totally or annihilated and massacred, or 7 million, 8 million population in Israel should be annihilated. Neither case is acceptable from the humanitarian perspective. They have to find a way to coexist in the region as two states. But if that's where actually we're getting into the potentially conspiracy aspect of this situation, is the case that if this is deemed to be impossible, then everything else is game, up to and including, unfortunately, maybe even Third World War. Thank you for listening to my recording. Any questions and comments, please leave under this video in the comments section. Again, some of you may disagree, which I totally expect, or partially agree or disagree, whatever. But again, if you paid attention, I made a genuine effort to be able to explain my thoughts on this matter without necessarily taking one side and one side only. It is very difficult to do that. It is very difficult to be 100% objective. And even if you think you're being objective, given the conditions, if you were in that situation, that would have been near impossible. I know that too. Nevertheless, this is my take. Like I said, this is my 2 cents on that issue. Again, I appreciate it for your time, for listening to me. I hope we can meet another video again. Take care and stay safe.